Okay, so we're back with a sort of podcast, I guess. It's been a while. Last time we talked, it was Filmomat Lite and how we would do the next podcast developing. We can start with that talk.
It's downstairs,
But we also just came back from Photopia in Hamburg. It's a photography fair trying to take the lead or take the, how do you say it when you...
kind of filling the space of what used to be
Photokina.
Photokina, yeah. Big Frankfurt show. Frankfurt?
Cologne,
sorry. All the fairs are in Frankfurt, but yeah.
But yeah, we came back from that. So let's start with where we left it at, because we did do some stuff with a Filmomat Lite. We don't have any results per se. I guess we do. We use Scan them all.
We developed probably 20 rolls on it?
No more.
Oh yeah, because we did your like 20, 30 rolls, and then I've done another
40-ish
Really? Wow.
rolls.
Nice.
But yeah, so if you don't remember, the Filmomat is made, Filmomat Lite is made by Filmomat, the company, and they have a processor that is very high-end, quite small yield. Seems quite delicate, if you ask me. But yeah, we've never used it, so we're just talking from seeing videos online and seeing it in person at fairs, but not. But the Filmomat Lite is a entry-level processor with way less bells and whistles. The beauty of it is theoretically the simplicity of it, but also we've struggled with some, I don't know if it's, you're a manufacturer, you do Valois stuff, so you can mention it. And I think it's good that we mention it because Lucas has helped us throughout the issues we've had, but we've also put it to more stress test than maybe most people will do in the first week.
Yeah, you might not expect it to behave like it did in the first week, but it's just like any product, especially launching a new product with a small team. It's like early kind of childhood problems with product is very, very normal. Lucas, like everyone else doing things in the film community, are very responsive and send out replacements and that kind of thing. So we first had it uses these like C-clips.
Yeah.
They're usually around axles to attach. There's some wheels on there, and then there are C-clips holding them in place, and those, I guess the quality wasn't good enough, so they rusted and broke.
I think they were slightly too small, maybe,
yeah.
And they just like snapped off.
They seem to have had like a microfracture, so that the second time after it had sat in water, this microfracture had kind of rusted a little bit, and they broke off.
Yeah, but he sent us replacements
Bag of
like
replacements,
a day.
and it took me like 5 minutes to install them. So fine.
But the stress test we did is what we talked about in the last podcast. Was I have over 60, 80, 90, 100 rolls of black and white film that have been sitting in my to-do list for too long. So Arald basically pulled me into let's do it now. We did runs of 5 or 6 rolls with the 1500 series Jobos and the Filmomat Lite and the HC110 in B, because I push all my film to 1600, so that's my formula, even though HC110 is gone. We can talk about that too. But basically it was pretty great. The major problem we had was the tanks weren't drying fast enough, the reels.
We just didn't have enough.
But we just did batches and batches and batches. And at the same time, Valois man here himself set up a Valois 360 and was scanning while we were loading and developing and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So we did 40 rolls, 60, I can't remember, we can check the number after, but like over 40 rolls in a few hours with scanning included. And it was all black and white, so conversion was pretty fast.
It's pretty cool. Like it was a fun stress test. I've never done that big a batch in one sitting, and it was pretty cool doing the kind of setting up the process and
it's
then
like a factory.
doing it. Yeah.
And the fun part was basically the Filmomat Lite has its quirks, but at the price point it sits, it's so much easier to start it and use it than a Jobo. I know a Jobo has many things that theoretically are better, but also make it a little more complicated. So like the Filmomat doesn't have a heating element. You use like a sous vide. We use the Cinestill one because that's the one I have that Cinestill sent me a couple years ago. And that just warmed up the machine in like 15 seconds.
It's really quick, and it's also, I really like them. The water bath is much smaller than a Jobo, so it's much quicker to heat up, and it's much more stable.
And it has recirculation, which is
Yes.
something that the cheaper Jobos don't have the pump.
Yeah.
So this is amazing. I used to use a aquarium pump, like a 15-euro aquarium pump to just
Elegant.
move the, yeah, but it worked.
Yeah.
To move the Jobo water around the Jobo CPE3 or CPE2s, because the CPAs or CPPs have the pump,
Yep.
but the cheaper entry levels don't. So one problem with the Filmomat was the cracking of those C-clips. Another one is that the chemical storage will float if it doesn't have full weight. There's people that have shown like different solutions. I think Shoot Film Like a Boss made like maybe some sort of 3D printed or laser cut like template.
Yeah.
I haven't watched the whole review, but just bear in mind that the price comes with some inconveniences. But if you're doing black and white like we did at 20 degrees Celsius, 69 Fahrenheit for those that are in Fahrenheit, it's really simple to use, fast. The wheel grips on the tank pretty well. It does feel like it slips sometimes. But
Yeah,
it's
I tried them with the bigger Jobo tanks.
Ah.
I forget what they're called.
2500
Those.
series.
And it kind of worked mostly. I just used the smaller ones.
Smaller ones.
They're fine.
The thing is, the wheel that moves has a weight or counterweight.
Yeah.
It's not a counterweight. It's actually just a weight.
Yeah.
And that weight seems to be slightly under like the weight it should be. I would like attach 3-4 more weights on it, like small weights, to give it a bit more weight to it.
It's especially, I mean, when it's sitting kind of, so it's this arm that sits on top of the tank and it rotates it, and
the lower it
the
is,
lower it goes,
harder.
the more it presses down. But when it's high up with a larger tank, it's not as effective.
I mean, it's like this is heavier than this.
Yeah.
It's just the physics, I guess. Yeah, physics.
Gravity.
And physics that stop it. But yeah, the machine works pretty well. I say for the price, there's nothing I've seen that makes me more interested in developing. Obviously, like I said, a Jobo's 1,000 plus. That's a little better because it just has decades of development. But I think Filmomat's onto something, Lucas. But yeah, we'll leave the link below to the machine and whatnot. We won't be showing much. Maybe I'll show a couple results of my scans and whatnot. Some were little issues with light leaks on my film, and some were rolls from who knows when my kids were how old, but it's been really fun to use. So ending that Filmomat, we can take over.
Do you want to mention the Argo as well?
The Argo's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming October
It's
3rd.
interesting
I don't know
because
when the
they're
podcast will be live.
Quite a similar price point, so it's quite an interesting comparison.
Yeah.
At some point, it will be an interesting comparison.
I mean, the Argo is a processor that is more like a dry processor in the sense that it's not submerged in any chemicals. It is like a half a motor lid that goes onto Patterson tanks, and only Patterson tanks that have to be drilled specifically, and he will deliver the cone. So the funnel that you put in the Patterson tank has to be drilled, so the in and out of chemistry is easier and faster. That it has a sensor. This is the best part of the Argo, whatever, Argo. That has a sensor that feels the temperature of the chemicals and will correct the process with like logarithmic formulas. And then you can empty it and fill it without taking it off.
Yeah.
So
it's quite clever. If it works consistently on color film, it will be very interesting because you don't have to keep a consistent temperature. It will compensate in time for dropping temperatures, which would be great. We'll see.
I mean, we haven't seen it out in the wild yet. We've tested it here in our location at work because he did come to visit us when he was, starting to have prototypes. But we want to see how it ends up turning for our people and the price point and the campaign, because there's going to be a crowdfunding campaign. So this might not end up raising all the money. We don't really know yet all the details of the campaign, but it will be another processor that's in the light versions of processors that are kind of exciting.
It's very positive that home developing is becoming more accessible.
Yeah, I still think that the simplicity of the Filmomat Lite with just SOVDA is like super nice. Yeah. And someone, I think it was Ethan who came over to visit us, Cameradactyl, was like, well, if you're putting a temperature probe, just put a heating element. And he's not completely wrong. Well, it does add more things that you need to do, like FCC or EU laws. Yeah. So there's more to it, but that would have been a nice progression. Like just make the probe and another one with a heating element, and then you're kind of like, oh, it's going too low, just like warm it up. But this thing does run on its own batteries, so it doesn't have to be plugged into the wall. Theoretically, if you are one of those crazy people that wants to develop on the road, it would be the best option. but I
You
just
combine
don't
it with the EC35 and you have an entirely on-the-road compatible battery setup.
We should do a video developing and scanning from the back of a pickup truck. I think I've seen that before. But so those are the processor news in a way. We can start with Photopia. We have a little list that's hidden just behind here to give us reminders. So Photopia. Photopia basically is a photography fair and there's Chromeland, but you explain what all of it means.
Yeah, so Photopia tries to appeal to this general audience. There's drones and tripods and all kind of like general photography stuff, but then there's this corner for analog only, and Photopia has been kind of encouraging that with Chrome, which is a local store in Hamburg. They've organized this space. It's kind of the cool kids corner with only analog. It looks quite different in terms of the style of the area, more like a kind of wood vintage aesthetic. And they've invited players like us and other brands and other artists in the analog space to essentially form a community around the analog stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the fair itself is a big messy halls, very much like a parking lot with a roof. They've done a very good job in throwing containers because Hamburg is a major container port for Europe. But they've put all these containers, and Canon is there, and Leica is there, and all these, like you said, Nisi and Vespid. No, Vespid is gone. But basically, all these brands, Fuji was there, Sony was there, all these guys were there. But the Chromeland corner is Photopia's approach to trying to promote like a bit more of a vibe onto a fair. So traditional trade shows are quite boring, one could say.
Corporate kind of.
Kind of corporate, old school, crunchy-ish. And Photopia is like, hey, we would love to like give this photography fair a twist with a bit more of a style and a feeling and a, whatever you want to call photography nowadays. So Chromeland is, like I said, done with Chrome from Hamburg. It's a photo store that's in the middle of Hamburg that serve the analog community. They have a lab that's working really well. They literally just put a new Polenta black and white machine there, so they're going heavy into it. And they also have a gallery, which is beautiful. That's a different topic. So Chromeland is like a hub for the film kind of friends, artist, industry, talks, drinks, everything is great. And that was what there was there last year. This year they replicated it, but there's even been additions to people that are interested in this like analog kind of like, hey, this is worth having a stand. So this year, for the first time in this fair, Adox and Photo Impex had a booth. Mirko, the owner of both of them, was there with Lina Besonova, who is his partner, wife, and also was doing workshops, and they had a built-in darkroom in there, so that was really cool. But yeah, Chromeland we can go through the list of people that were there officially exhibiting, and then we can kind of go into the news and talks we had, because that's, I think, what's most interesting. We had Valoy with Harold and Thomas here from Finland. We had Kegs, who does light meters. Kegs spelled Keks. They had this new little very, very small cubey light meter. Reminds me of the Rebeni, but like metal housing, which is nice to see.
Large sugar cube.
Yeah, large sugar cube, but a light meter. Then we had Silver Salts was there with promoting their ECN2 film that they also scan and develop and do all this stuff with crazy resolution. Plus also cinema stuff that they do. So that's also why I had a little bit of Ektachrome here. Like 16 mil, 35 mil, they have basically an amazing thing. And they're moving to Berlin, but that's for when we go into details. Then we had Wet Plate with Max.
Yep.
I don't know his full name and last name, but we can put a link.
Yeah.
He was doing a wet plate with a Chamonix 11x14, which I had one and I sold it, so I miss it.
Sad.
But he was shooting like 18x24-ish wet plates. Then we had 20x24 Polaroids, which were there last year, shooting, super big
Mega Polaroids. Probably the last ones you'll see.
Yeah. Then we had Colenta, which is the film processing supplier of, I guess, wet processing machines.
Dry to dry.
Dry to dry.
Yeah.
So
maybe you should explain what that means.
Yeah, we can get back to that.
Okay, sure.
But yeah,
They make
Colenta.
processing machines for paper and film.
Yeah. And then we had Ferrania, which was very interesting.
Very interesting.
and Chrome. And I think we don't have anybody else there. Then as guests, we had Jason from Grainy Days, which was there for a couple of days, did a photo walk. We had a talk on the main stage. I was there invited by Chromeland to basically interview people and try to help with some recordings. There'll be videos that you either have watched or will watch after this. But yeah, that's what was there. I don't know. We can start with how it was like news from the industry that we saw there. There was a lot of people that came to the fair that were not exhibiting.
Yeah, which
And
is a big contrast from last year. I think what's interesting with the fair this year compared to last year is that the businesses, small or large, seem to take it more seriously. They saw last year, oh, interesting people were here. Let's go this year and talk to them.
Yeah.
So lots of visitors.
So we had Carmencita, Albert from Carmencita was there, Film Lab, a friend of ours, but also was there to just talk business with some people. Orwo was there, sort of exhibiting. The main, I guess, coding boss, I don't know what you want to call him, was there, Robert. He gave us some news, which we can talk later. Then we had Nation Photo, Maximilian from Nation Photo Lab in Paris. They have 3 locations and do a ton of developing in France, or Paris per se. Then walking around, we also talked to Rico, the president of Rico Europe came and talked to us. I think he said he watches the news, which was pretty impressive. Yeah. Then Ilford was there visiting and mentioning and saying hello. We did an interview for them. And people like that. So
Silver Grain Classics?
Silver Grain Classics, yes,
Okay, yes.
with the White Lux project. So yeah, it basically has gone from being like this analog corner with a bunch of people have like very small stands to being that plus more people coming in and people mentioning, hey, next edition we might have a booth.
Yeah.
So like people like Cinestil were sharing booths with Mirko and Adox and Photo Impex. They were like, we probably will have our own booth next year and show more stuff. And Carmencita even said things like that. So that's what I think is the main take from the fair, is that it seems to be more interesting. The analog corner, like the Chromeland, was super busy. It seemed
Super busy,
way more busy than the rest of the fair. We also were there all the time, so I guess we didn't see if Canon booth got really busy at some
There
time.
were areas that were very busy on the rest of the fair, but they was typically kind of around specific events or like giveaways. So there's like the Canon, there was constantly a line for the
Canon printing.
Yeah, that sort of thing. But in general, the heavy foot traffic was focused around the analog area. At least that was my impression.
Yeah. So into the part that is more like news likely or interesting per se for the fair, you have some notes. So what do you have first?
Let's go around. Do you want to talk about film first?
Film.
Sure. So we had at the fair we had Verania, Ardox, kind of Orwo. They're kind of part of some German
Anton
store.
and something, yeah. Some distributor, something like that.
Yeah. Do we have all the film? Ilford was obviously there with news. Max was there. They're bringing out, well, not really Max, but people in France and Paris are bringing out this new film called Mira Film. It's washed cinema film and seems to be good quality and made in France. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of film going on. You have this Ilfocolor.
Yeah, so let's start with the main thing that we noticed is a lot of people were talking color film.
That's the big thing.
Yeah.
Which right now color film is made by
Kodak.
1.5 company.
Well, Kodak is traditionally the one that we know for sure. Fuji is still Japan mystery. But Orwo, who's been a player that I've hesitated a lot about the way they've done things, and I think I still agree that the way they've done things is improvable, and obviously you can't go backwards in time and fix things. But I was very harsh on the engineer or coding master last year because I thought it was a scam, and I kind of told him that last year. This year, he was still there. Film seems to be getting delivered to most people. I still think there's some people that haven't gone to film, and that should be the priority for Orwo.
Yeah.
But I did go there, apologize, said I'm happy to see you because obviously the more color players we have, the better. They've had the Orwo NC500 and NC400 available for pretty much the whole year.
If you can get it.
Yeah, but like in Freestyle the US and Chrome and many other stores have it, even though people that pre-ordered it early on haven't gotten it. Or so far, that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
I've seen a call out for action on Twitter by someone saying, "Hey, is anybody missing their film?" And pretty much everybody was like, "No, I finally got it."
Right. Interesting.
So I've only heard of one big player that ordered like 1,000 rolls that maybe still hasn't gotten it.
Yeah, I heard from one retailer in Asia that asked me, like, "Hey, do you know anything about these guys? They're also, in
Not
Europe."
delivering.
Yeah, but that
Yeah.
that was a few months ago, so that might be resolved by
So
now.
yeah, but they were there. He was happy to see me, which was nice because I was pretty harsh last time. I do have usually can be quite harsh to people if I don't agree with what they're doing. And in the news, I can't do that, but in person, I can be like, "What the hell," you know? So they not only had the NC400 and NC500, but they had news. And the guy was like, "I got something for you," which was very interesting. And he pulled out these two rolls. You obviously can't see it because the camera's really far, but it reads.
Can I open it?
No, don't open it.
Don't
I'm
open it.
very careful with the film because these are test rolls. It reads NC200 and then says 10. You said, what does bilder mean?
Pictures.
Pictures of 6x6.
Bit strange for a 6x6. That's usually 12.
Yeah, so this is a 120 roll. This is hand spooled by the coating master himself. He was telling us he has a machine that he can coat like 50 centimeters total,
What?
like really small rolls.
Interesting.
It almost looks like when you're making pasta at home. That's how he kind of painted it. So that gives us this 120, and then we have NC200 in 36 exposure, 35 mil roll. This is a new color film coated by Orwo. If you're doubting what Orwo is doing, do they have manufacturing and whatnot? It is Innoviscoat, which is a coating factory based in Germany. They are the main coating, and I think it's actually owned by Polaroid. And this is all like behind the booth talks and stuff, and I'm not breaking any NDAs or anything like that. But that's what I've been told, or I think it is. So this NC200, he had color prints. You saw the color prints?
I didn't actually.
Oh wow, you missed them.
Too busy.
Yeah, but the prints of this, he had like color charts and everything. He had a portrait with him holding a color chart. The reds are the main thing. So anybody that shot the NC400, 500 have noticed that the red is like meh. It's like a little bit of a dead red. It's not like vibrant, and reds are really hard, I think, to make on film. Like Kodachrome is famous for the reds. So they have kind of fixed reds. So this film is the most boring in the sense that it has no real character. In the sense that the other films they made had like a lot of character, like they look nostalgic or whatever you want to call. This is the most neutral looking, good looking film I've seen. ISO 200 coming in 35 by the end of next year, I think, or somewhere next year, and 120 also probably at the same time. So it's exciting news. He said I could share it. I can't share the results because I basically didn't go and record them, but it was there. And that's pretty cool because it's not coated by Kodak.
Yeah, coated in Europe, color film that does not look like shit is very interesting.
It's good news.
Very good news.
Converting the film with Orwo, and we've had basically Kodak and Ilford, and we've known FOMA has some capacity of doing it, even though I've also heard that it's being done by other people.
Yeah.
But Orwo has been seen converted by people like a Canadian player that's been finishing film for a lot of people. So that's interesting. But then some people in the fair told me like coated in Germany, finished in China.
Yeah,
so
that's the new that's showed up in the past year. These both 120 and 35 with different canisters and clearly different kind of backing paper finished in China.
Yeah. So there seems to be a player in China that's converting film, finishing film.
Yeah. Potentially making canisters.
So this
maybe.
Ilford color kind of falls into that. So Ilford color is made not by Harman in the UK, but it's the other Ilford. So I'll be super fast. Ilford broke into bankruptcy and divided the brand into two names. Ilford, I think it's Ilford Photo and Ilford Imaging.
Ilford Imaging Europe GmbH.
Yeah, so that one's the German/Japanese one that is using film from other people to sell Ilford color. And the Ilford Harman Technologies is the one in the UK that does our black and white film that we all love so much.
Yeah.
So it's no mystery, this film is obviously not Ilford, made in the UK. It's not coated by them. It is coated by, I don't know if I can say because he didn't really say, but it's coated by one of the people that are here on the table.
And it's packaged in China. It says on the box.
Yeah, packaged in China. So that was one of the things. But another thing that we talked to Ilford Harman Technologies was that they have actively decided to change distributors. They did 7 changes in one go. And this is not usually news on any way, but it's pretty amazing that they have slashed 7 distributors and put 7 new ones.
So this is talking about not this UK.
Yeah, but kind of has something to do with it.
Okay, explain.
Okay, so Ilford, like I said, Harman Technology is the one that does HP5 and the other stuff. UK. Was distributing through someone else in Germany. Now, for the first time ever since their bankruptcy back in whenever, they are now united in Germany. So Ilford, the one doing this film or reselling this film and some of the Ilford colored little point and shoot cameras, is now going to be distributing the black and white goods that we all love. So in Germany, it almost is like if they've merged into one. It's distribution, basically. They're not like, sharing business ideas and stuff like that, at least as far as I know. But that's kind of cool news because it's always been very confusing, and it seems that they've regained conversations, which is a big deal. But Ilford has changed distribution in multiple places in one go. Their main goal is that the distributors now, or should try, is to be more engaged with the community. So
you might have followed the UK kind of direct communication from Ilford has changed a lot over the past kind of 2 years, and it's now much more engaging. They have good community manager that takes care
photo
of
walks and labs and like
videos and all this kind of stuff. That's really positive for the community, and they're really listening to the community now. And
especially the lower end of like the beginners.
Yes,
I won't say the lower end, and like they're basically in know-how. So they've been filling a lot of gaps in like how to develop the simplicity kits they've made, the pop-up darkroom. So they're really trying to promote film photography for people that are inexperienced or kind of like scared. And they really want that like retail shops in the neighborhoods or distributors in their different countries to be very proactive with users, like helping them load a camera, helping them unload a camera, helping them choose. So they're pushing to that kind of distributor. If it's an old kind of like more traditional distributor that is just like pushing SKUs, and it's another battery from Sony cameras or it's a roll of Ilford, they're kind of not so happy with that. They want it to be a bit more engaging. And that's good news for the community because that means there should be changes for more photo walks, more opportunities for you to kind of like get into film or enjoy other films or talk to peers, whatever that is. So that's why it kind of ties to this Ilford, which is the other Ilford, is the Ilford Imaging and not the Ilford Photo. But what other color news do we have? You talked about the Frenchies for a little bit, but you can continue a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is essentially the same as Cinestill does. I think that's quite, you can say that. It's Kodak is still producing nice volumes of Vision 3, so their ECN2 process film used in cinema, which you can't really put through a normal color processor like a Mini Lab because it has this black gunk coating on the back that's meant to, I guess, lubricate and protect the film in the cinema cameras, but it screws with the rollers and the chemistry in normal C41 processors. But you can develop the film in C41 after you remove that. So quite a few companies now, one in China, obviously Cinestill, these guys, and like smaller players, hobbyists kind of people are starting to figure out how to do this consistently. And Cinestill has always been doing this for years and years and years. But
I mean, Cinestill is the one that obviously started this whole ballpark of like, hey, color film, and Cinestill started when color film was still affordable-ish. And Cinestill was more expensive back then already. But they created this look. When you remove this remjet, you lose the whole backing layer of the film, which means the light will go through the film, bounce on the plate of your camera, and bounce back. So it creates these halos on the light. So like this light that's here would be like a little bit of a blob. And people have come to love that look. I think that Cinestill is continuing, obviously, to fill their market share of like, they have 400D, they have 800T, they have the X, double X,
50D.
50D. So they've been doing this for a long time, and they've been doing 120 also. And there's news from them that actually the 4x5 is coming.
I've heard that before.
They confirmed it at the fair, and they said it was like literally now.
Okay,
so it's happening finally. Almost in the mail for people which have been waiting for the 400D. They will go into stock after that. I don't know if it's going to go to the other emulsions. But yeah, other players have been trying to obviously replicate what Cinestill has done.
For the these projects are kind of coming from the like 2021, 2022, like really bad shortage of color film. Labs especially really need color film to be in circulation, and not having enough meant that this was very difficult.
I mean, labs run on developing and scanning, and if there's no color film, people were not sending it to their lab, obviously. So that there's been a need, and this Mira film is coming from France. It is obviously, as you can see, the size of the box. If you can, it's very small. Doesn't have the plastic canister. It's just a 35 ml roll there. But it's cool to see people solving the conversion problem, solving like the remjet problem. Will this exist in 10 years? We don't know. But it's kind of cool to see. Obviously, it's still coded by Kodak. So if Kodak decides to stop, there goes everybody's business. Except for, like we said, those other players that are starting to code.
Yeah.
Another one that we can talking about that is Ferrania. So Ferrania was there. I was extremely excited to see Ferrania. I hadn't seen a person from Ferrania in person ever. And this very nice gentleman from Germany was there. We got
Reiner?
Reiner, I think.
Yeah.
We got to talk to him. Initially, he was very, explaining this stuff. And then when he noticed that we knew more about what was going on, he was very open. So Ferrania has had their P30 film that's an ISO 80 black and white film. He showed us a new P30 with a matte finish box, which he said was a different, slightly tuned emulsion that was more like an ISO 100, which seems to be kind of living side by side for the time being. It's just extremely confusing for the end user.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Much as we root for Ferrania, like making the box matte or making it shiny does not make
It's like
it,
make
like,
P30
no.
and then make P31. And the P30 is 80 and P31
If
is
they're
100.
different films, put them in different boxes.
So that's part of the thing he showed us. Obviously, again, I think I didn't shoot any footage of that, but it is matte versus non-matte. So if you get the non-matte, it's more like 100. We do know that the glossy, did I get that wrong?
You got that wrong.
Yeah. So the glossy one was ISO 80, but people said it was even lower, so like 64 or even 50.
Yeah.
And the matte one is ISO 100, which might be 80.
We
So
tried it, can't
yeah.
tell, but
they did mention they were playing with the idea of coming out with a P33, which was a 400 ISO black and white. I guess it's in development and they're trying to do that. He did explain that all the chemists that were at the factory were never color chemists. They were, black and white chemists. They were color chemists. So they were kind of like, hey, when can we do more like color? And he did talk about color. They've leaked this on their socials, I guess as a little bit of tongue in cheek, like a roll that said color. They seem to be working towards making color. And again, you've heard this for years. It's like the Cinestill 4x5 sheets.
heard that
But
before.
there in person, this guy mentioned, Rainer, that it is coming. When? That's a big question because of color couplers and color finishing and quality and consistency and yada, yada, yada. But they were there to talk about it, which was very interesting. They had a whole interview in German with Adox and LFI, Tobias from LFI, Leica Photographic International, something like that is the magazine. They have a podcast, so if you know German, you can listen to that and tell me if you know any more. But yeah, Ferrania was there. They were happy to talk. They were talking about the issues they've had and the raising capital and the continuing and so on.
Yeah.
But they were there to show face.
Overall positive, I think.
Yeah.
They were there, which obviously means, they care about trying to promote it. They're not on the brink of bankruptcy, but also they have new products and they're,
and 120, and they said that they did everything in house, which means we have another converting player.
Yes, they said so.
They said so. Do I believe it?
The canisters looked strangely similar to other canisters from other players. But
And their 120 came exactly at the same time we started to see it 120 come from Asia. So I'm still tempted to try to go to Ferrania and record some stuff and see. Sometimes you can't show things, but I would love to show, if they have the capacity, how they're doing things themselves. But that was good news. And then we have, for color film, a little bit of color film, but also 120. We have Adox.
oh, it's super interesting.
And Mirko, who was there. Mirko came over to me to do an interview, but it was like the last hour of the fair, and I didn't really have a recording booth corner. So sorry for Mirko and Adox for not being able to show you this. But he mentioned that their 120 spooling machine is pretty much working, and that means that they're able to convert their current stocks to 120. So I don't know if it'll start in a month or 2 months or 3 months, but supposedly we'll start seeing batches of Adox 120. This has been something they've been fighting for 5 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Forever. Yeah.
Yeah. They had a partner that was doing it for them. Then I think that partner basically told them no more.
I think you can still find the listings on Photo Impex. They've enthusiastically kept them open. Like it's been sold out for 5 years, but
Yes.
you can find the listings.
So we actually even have rolls of the 120
shot a roll, actually, yeah.
100. So it is happening. Obviously, machines running at an industrial level means that it could work for 6 months and then not work fine.
Yeah.
But it's good news. They've also stepped in to try to help for the pocket that we found from Kodak. So Kodak, Sinopromise, basically has stopped making chemistry. D76, Xtol, stuff like that have been long gone from shops. And Adox has been with their small team trying to replenish these chemicals for people to continue using their machines and processing and film. So I have a pouch of D76 to test. They have Xtol copy, which is called like XT3, I think.
XT3, I actually really like that.
Yeah, and they're continuing to try to do everything that Kodak had failed to do or to supply now, and they can do it. Obviously, the scale of Adox is completely different to the scale of Kodak.
Yes.
But one thing that was very interesting that I was said, and I can't say who or how much of this is fully true, is that what could be happening is that Kodak Alaris, who sold the chemical division to Sinopromise, the Chinese player, might have not sold the formulas. So the intellectual property might still be part of Alaris.
Interesting.
So if Alaris finds somebody that can manufacture, we might see Kodak chemistry come back, which I'm very excited if that happens because HC110 is my jam.
Literally jam it.
Yeah, it's almost like jam. But this is something they said that Sinopromise factory land was for sale. China's real estate bubble has burst, and it's going to be a major issue for Chinese companies and some others. But it seems that Sinopromise has no intention coming back, and maybe Alaris managed to find another retailer that actually or manufacturer that can remake the chemistry. But that's a lot of maybes and probablys, or maybe not reality.
The
like I
other
said.
maybe that I find quite interesting from the fair, which didn't come from the source but came from a secondary company that works with chemicals, is that Fuji chemistry seems very available, like comfortably available. That was a thing we were concerned about for a while, that Fuji chemistry would just disappear, but that seems to be resolved. Question mark? Maybe.
It's Japan, so with Fuji and Japan, always news, never.
Yeah,
never
there was a big dip kind of year and a half ago, and then now it seems, I asked around a bit and no one could really.
But some
say.
labs have been converting to Bellini, who's an Italian manufacturer of chemistry.
More consistent.
Yeah, basically no blips, but also maybe more expensive per roll. So honestly, the color chemical situation seems to be okay for now, but it still is in the verge of like, who knows if Fuji will really say no more. Bellini, can they scale up to what Fuji was doing? There's conversation of the CD3, CD4, which are the main components of color chemistry and color film, to be available through only one player in the world. So there's like a lot of play there. But so far, everybody was very excited. People are trying to code color. People are getting to code color and convert color. So that's really good news. And basically, apart from that, the only other thing we had is I guess the other one is we talked to Rico, president of Rico Europe, came to just introduce himself and talk about the option project, film project. We all know about Pentax saying that they're working towards maybe making a film camera.
Well, their videos are they've put out a series of YouTube videos over the past year, and they're we're doing this, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, this is why we're doing it.
But the main concern, or the main thing he mentioned, was that there's no guarantees that it will launch, that they're still very testing the market, because they were very worried about, we can make cameras, but will there be chemicals, will there be film, will there be, or how much market there is. So I told him that I think in film cameras, new film cameras today, you have the Kodak Plastic Fantastic H35 at $40, and then you have Leica at the $5,000 mark, and in the middle you have lomography.
Yes.
So that's what we have. We have Mint working on a 35mm camera. They've been leaking or showing their LiDAR sensors and all this stuff for focusing. But I told Pentax we have from like $40 to $5,000 market share. And they were very concerned about like, hey, what about used cameras? Because those are still in circulation. And as somebody that works in a place that tests cameras all day, every day, I told them like, yes, film cameras are obviously there in secondhand market, but they're failing more and more every day due to lack of maintenance, lack of actual lifespan. Like they're just way beyond their lifespan.
Especially the lower end, which is where we would kind of hope Pentax to come in. Like
Or electronics.
electronics, the easier to use stuff that's from the 90s and the 2000s. That's a really good beginner camera, but it's failing quickly.
Yeah.
I noticed recently in our store, I was looking for a point and shoot for a friend, and noticed, oh yeah, we have 30 RB67s, but we have like 100 questionable point and shoots.
I mean, and testing them, like the quality
It's
of
nothing.
like is just really hard. Cameras are starting to fail, like overexposing, underexposing, being erratic sometimes due to like electronics starting to fail.
Yeah.
So like I told him like that's the reality of what we're seeing in the market, and also spare parts. They did mention it. They do come out with a camera finally. There will be spare parts. There will be repairability to it. Obviously, Europe and other countries are moving towards a more sustainable repairs. So like right to repair is a thing in the U.S. and in Europe. So that was really interesting. We had a good hour, I would say, conversation with President of Ricoh Europe. So thank you so much for coming over and talking to us. Nothing mind-blowing of like, here's the camera I had in my pocket for 6 months kind of
No.
thing.
To me, it's very positive that they do reach out to the existing film community and do talk to us, and they take feedback, and they seem like genuinely interested
in
in
our
what we have to
feedback.
say and interested in the community.
And they've been doing this, I think, from the very start.
Yeah.
But obviously, we'll see if something comes out, what comes out, what the price will be, and what the market reception will be towards more releases. But I'm very hopeful that they will. I'm very hopeful the market will accept it. I'm hopeful that they can fill in that gap of, entry-level kind of cameras that are not 5,000 euros.
Be good.
And then people can support them, and we can see Pentax in the game. But yeah, that...
Not quite.
we have more stuff. Oh, we have Colenta.
We've not talked about Colenta, which is another part of this, like, I guess it's a rectangle of things that you need to shoot film: chemistry, film, cameras, developing machines.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in the user side, you can just develop in your bathroom with,
Yes, but
like a
most of the
bucket.
market does not rely on that.
Yes, but Colenta was there. It was very interesting because we were at this fair, and this Chromeland corner was full of people like me, dressed with like a jean jacket and a little cap and like cool camera straps, leather stuff. And then Colenta was like in full-on suits, like standing very straight and very serious. And I approached them, I don't know, first day, second day, to talk a little bit because I've been a fan of Colenta for years, but I guess nobody really knows who they are. So Colenta makes, like we talk processors, but like industrial scale processing. So it's dry to dry for 35 millimeter film, 120 film, 4x5, 8x10 sheets, dip and dunks, RA4 paper, like X-rays and stuff. But the thing is, when digital basically killed all the film industry, at least almost killed them all, Colenta kind of had to like back up to like what was their core business that could make them survive. And that was what they call wet processes in X-ray industry. So think about your soldering gas pipelines and all this thing. They don't rely on like digital scanning. They use like film scanning. So they use like X-ray machines and they develop. So this is the industry that's supported Colenta throughout the years. But they had all the know-how of doing dip and dunks and film developing for us. So they saw that people were buying these machines secondhand for scraps and trying to fix them and talking to them. And they started a division of like, hey, let's put some people towards making film processing again for us, still photographers, not X-ray people. And they started, and it's been a huge demand. They've been growing and growing and growing. They were there in a way because Chromeland, Chrome had purchased the black and white, so they were there to kind of support the Chromeland. But they were telling us about how many labs, universities, colleges, all this stuff in the
Showing us
US
all
were
the
buying.
recent installations. There was loads of them.
Yeah. And it's like RA4 paper. If you want a processor that's dry to dry, they basically don't exist anymore except for Colenta.
You can buy a used one, and it's gonna give you a lot of headache.
Yeah, you're gonna spend hours of money on finding parts that you can't even find. So Colenta's doing this service. They said that currently the analog film photography market for them is 15%. which is significant.
Yeah.
And they were very happy there to explain it. They have the Eco line. They had all these like different versions of smaller processors to big processors. We saw one with a 80-inch mouth, which
Ridiculous.
is the size of like a minivan. So this is for like mega posters and campaigns. It was very interesting to see, and I think they were kind of like a little susceptible, like, you know, they were looking at the analog people walking around there and kind of looking like, this is our demographic, but honestly, that is their demographic, and they kind of like softened up towards the end, understanding that the market has changed, that obviously their machines have to be like perfect in the developing and the non-scratching and the non-this, but the demand for film products and stuff. But Colenta is a big player and a necessary player in the industry. There was one thing that was very interesting he mentioned, I think you were there, is that every film manufacturer that is coating film has a Colenta machine for their R&D.
Yeah, which makes complete sense. If you're in a professional environment, you cannot have things just break and not be able to find parts for the next 6 weeks. Like,
So-
you need someone, okay, we need this part, here you go.
So when Kodak released, I'm holding Ektachrome again, they talked to Colenta and they installed a E6 Colenta machine to test their batches.
Yeah.
So as Kodak was investigating and probably still producing E100, they were just throwing it in this machine, testing how the colors are and whatnot. So that's really interesting. So obviously the price of a Colenta is not something that some amateur can cough up.
No, it's not for us.
Yeah.
It's, even though we want one.
It's associations, it's like mini labs,
Yeah.
labs, colleges, schools, stuff like that, because they're like I think the cheapest version they have, it might be within the 10,000-ish mark.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very interesting to see them there. I think more people should care about it. I have the brochure, which I might make a video about all the stuff they make, because it's interesting.
stuff.
Because when you go to I did a route in the US maybe a month and a half ago, and we talked to labs, and some labs were like, yeah, this is the last dip and dunk that exists. And it's like, well, no, you have Colenta. And the Colenta dip and dunk actually does the three processes, C41, E6, black and white.
Yes.
You have to clean the tanks between, but you can kind of like convert it, which is really interesting.
And I get why they say that. I'll admit, I didn't know Colenta made anything but RA4 paper processes. When they said they do C41 machine, I'm like, oh.
They do roller machines that do sheets.
I really wanted 8x10.
I was like, 8x10, you feed it in,
C41.
and it comes out through the rollers as a dry 8x10,
Yeah,
like
that would be-
C41.
That's very cool.
That's really cool. And that's the thing is, as the industry has survived, like the reason I started the news is because things like this were not making it anywhere. And I even knew about Colenta, and I think I put Colenta in the news a few times, but I think we need to
Re-educate, kind of.
re-educate and like analyze what is still available for your college or your school. Maybe maybe you have a photographic club that's in Rochester. Well, Rochester might be at a disadvantage in a way, or too much advantage. But maybe you're in Cornwall, UK, and you're like, hey, we're like 50 people that want to do RA4. The machine is 15,000 pounds. Let's just everybody pony up 200 pounds and we buy it. And I didn't do the math for that.
No, clearly not.
That's something that could be available. Obviously, these machines have to have a yield. Like you have to keep them consistently running. If not, they will fail. But they also have calculated like the yield to be as low as possible with consistent quality, because they know the current needs is not like thousands of prints every minute.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting to see them there. And the last one I think we have.
Silver Grain and the White Lux.
Yeah, so this has been going on online for a little bit. Silver Grain Classics, the magazine that is based in Germany, they talk about analog photography, film photography in English. They started off as a spin-off of Photo Classics, and then they separated and became Silver Grain. Andreas was there. We had a big talk on the big stage at Photopia about the White Lux, about the challenges, about the whys. So if you don't know why, basically Jeff Bridges, the actor, producer, director, musician, photographer, whatever you want to call it, this guy's a Renaissance man, is a huge fan of the White Lux. And he has like 8 of them, and they break all the time, and he has one that works. So in this, he reached out to Silver Grain to put his pictures on the magazine, like, hey, I have this work, I would love to show this body of work, because he shoots all the behind the scenes of the movies. And the aspect ratio is quite cinematic.
Yeah, and surprisingly suited for this kind of studio shot, because you could both kind of get the spotlight kind of area, but also the behind that, and the camera people and the lights and all the equipment.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting.
So yeah, so he basically approached them and said, "Hey, what do you think would be possible to recreate the Hilux?" And
Ambitious.
yeah, crazy idea from people that run a magazine and then basically artist, actor, director in the US, but they've decided to go for it. So the idea of this project is to recreate as close as possible to the original Hilux camera and make them again, but also maybe be able to go backwards and repair the old ones. So that's very exciting. Obviously, it's a camera like you would think, hey, what's the need for a new film camera nowadays? We just mentioned the idea of Pentax releasing stuff and the failing rate of cameras nowadays. Mechanical cameras can be repaired almost forever, but they also end up falling and breaking, and there's less numbers every day.
And the spare parts, especially in certain cameras,
but specialized cameras are rare. So this is a very specialized camera. The price of the camera has reached like the 1,500 to 2,000 euro dollar mark, and making a new one that actually has service options and spare parts and so on is quite interesting. I don't think that we didn't talk about price point because they're too early on. We didn't talk about exactly when the camera will be on because it's also kind of too early on. But they had some molds and new prints of the existing project. I hope that we see more of it soon. I guess due to it being tied to the magazine, they're very interested in kind of like giving you the what's going on through the magazine to help the magazine sales, which is very understandable. But the more we know, the more we'll share. But everything's going to be made in Germany, which is very interesting.
Very interesting. I mean, it doesn't really, on the surface, it doesn't really make sense that Silver Grain, the magazine, is supporting this. I mean, supporting, sure, but like kind of taking care of making it. Like they're not making it per se. It's not Andreas and his
filing
gear. No, but they're in a weirdly good position because they have a lot of contacts in the camera industry, and generally in Germany they're very well connected. Like
Germany is a hub for film photography.
As we usually say about this magazine, it exists because it's in Germany. Like if it were in Finland, it would die. There's no
connections.
No.
Yeah, I actually got to talk to somebody else that I don't think we've mentioned is what's their name? Goerlitz. Goertz Meyer Optik, whatever.
They were there?
They were at the party at the gallery, the friends and family party. I talked to him for a while. So they are basically a lens manufacturer, but he said, similar to Colenta, their main focus is optics and things for industry. And this whole like still photography kind of lenses is a thing that they have as a like extra.
Yeah.
But they're making new lenses, the Biotars and all this stuff for like the mirrorless, but also for Nikon F and Canon EF and like some other, I think like M2.
Yeah.
But they do optics. So like if Hilux project with Silver Grain is like we need lenses, they probably will talk to them. And if they need gears, they probably have all the suppliers that's supplying Leica camera. And if they need molds and CNC, I guess Germany has some of that.
Lots of it.
So that's the thing that's interesting about this project. The Hilux, Andreas mentioned it has 150 parts.
It's actually not that bad.
It's not that bad. Like your Veloy system has 152 parts.
Well, it's several products, but even the EZ35 has like 20 parts, and they're less complex than this. But still, it's like...
But like a camera that has 150 parts is very, very... Like it's a very small amount of parts.
It's a manageable amount of parts, even for a small.
Like an SLR, film SLR, has like 1,500 parts.
Yeah.
That's what Andreas was mentioning. I haven't counted the parts, but I've seen the mechanics here at work, and they have a lot of parts in there. So this is a very simple, basic camera that's very unique in the aspect ratio and the way you shoot it. So it will make sense. My main concern is like, what will be the ongoing demand for a product like this? Will it sell 100 cameras a year for the next 20 years? Will it sell 100 cameras the first year, 80 the second year, and none the third year?
Yeah.
Because obviously they said this camera was made in the 20,000-ish numbers, but that was the film heyday.
Total? So, like for all of the models?
I think maybe.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's surprisingly small.
But yeah, there was news there. There's a whole talk that I did with Andreas on the main stage. Supposedly Photopia will share the files with me so I can make a video talking about more of it. But yeah, Photopia was very interesting. I think we both were skeptical of going like, another fair. Will it be good? Will it not be good? I have to say, I think the main thing that makes it really great is Chrome and the organization that they do with Photopia and Chromeland. If it was anything similar to any other booths, it would have been just as boring and mundane as it usually can be.
Yeah.
But we will be going next year,
Think
hopefully.
so? Yeah. It's a very packed area, and like it's kind of small and too small for the amount of people, but that also makes it exciting and it means that you see people. Oh, that guy! I know that guy. I want to talk to him. It's quite engaging and quite good for the community in that sense. Whereas the rest of the thing is like 100 times the size, and everyone has a lot more space, and there's a lot of walking, and you never see anyone but the person who's right in front of you.
Yeah, I think it makes it really interesting. I once again thank them for the organization.
They're great job, like
yeah, they
amazing.
do a
As an
great job.
exhibitor there, it's very smooth, despite their complaints about how things are chaotic.
I think they feel like there's chaotic because a lot is happening.
Just a lot of
They have like I said, we have the talks. There's demonstrations with the 20x24. There's demonstration with the wet plate. There's interviews. There's like the drinks after happy hour. There's all this stuff that's going on at the same time. I was there, like I said, as a guest to be conducting interviews and talks and filming some of the stuff, talking the main stage. I felt pretty much always know what was going on.
Yeah.
I was told before, like, hey, we need to record this or we need to do that. So to me, it was perfect. We have talked, and I hope that we can make it into next year having a more of an industry interview corner. Because artists are cool, and I'm all about artists, but at the same time, I love the industry, as all you know. And a lot of people from the industry came like, hey, can we talk? We have an announcement to make, and there was no real space. I interviewed Ilford in the bar because it wasn't open yet. So that was very interesting. But I think there's space for this to become like the hub, the melting pot of industry.
It's really interesting if industry starts to announce things there again, because that's like back in the 50s and 60s. That's what Photokina used to be. Big brands used to announce
Like
their
the
new
Leica
cameras.
M3, and there was a huge Leica M3 camera. Like,
Yeah.
it was funny because last year the M6 was going to be announced at Photopia, but they decided to change it to their own event. That was
Which is
really
fair.
interesting. It's fair. Like nowadays,
yeah.
we don't need fairs to announce things, but
No.
it would have been amazing if they announced it there, just for the fair itself, to be like, hey, look at this. Because when Leica announced the M6, everybody in the industry was like, oh wow, that's a big thing to re-release a camera as iconic as the M6, and the Photopia would have benefit from that. One thing that I think is worth mentioning, and I don't know how true or not true it is, but it's worth to like maybe start a rumor, because it could be a good rumor, is that when Pentax announced their film project, supposedly some other players in the photography world, camera manufacturers, have started to do some inquiries. So I haven't been given any names, so you can take this with a huge pinch of salt. But imagine Nikon started doing the rounds of like, maybe we should make the FM again.
I mean, it's clear that they're looking at the market. They just launched their new
ZF.
yeah.
ZF.
Yeah, they're naming it. Yeah.
The
and
F for full frame, I guess.
and Z
and
because
Z
it's the Z
for the
system.
mount.
Yeah. But it's their kind of vintage analog styled digital camera. So they're clearly paying attention to the market and doing things that are not just like putting smartphones in cameras. So yeah, it's not unlikely that they're looking at it.
And as more as digital photography has merged from being, first it was the megapixel fight and the race, then it was the mirrorless race, and then it became the video hybrid camera race. They're running out of races. And in this race, the smartphone has basically come from behind, killing half of it. So now the new iPhone 15 has logarithmic video, is stabilized. You actually can record with a phone. It doesn't look crunchy and over sharpened like that, which is making that, why should I shoot a Sony S-Log? Maybe unless you really need that, but it's starting to like, that beginner's market now can start being a cinematographer per se with a smartphone. And the digital camera industry is kind of being smaller and smaller every year, but still releasing more competition, 8K video, ProRes, Blackmagic RAW, OpenGate, all these things. But what is the next thing? Like, is there a big breakthrough in that? And it's going to be like, yes, HDR, but what is the next thing? Maybe they do have to put a leg in the analog and say, you know what, we're going to come out with a Nikon
it's
FM.
diversification. It makes sense. And if Pentax goes ahead and shows that, oh, there is a market here, then it's much easier for everyone else to follow.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because the fair itself had digital products, digital cameras, a lot of stabilizers and gimbals and all this stuff, and drones. But they had, for example, the AI corner, which was really interesting because to me, AI in a way is going to replace a lot of photo shoots and jobs for photographers, which means that they're promoting the future of photography, which will theoretically kill the size of the industry, at least
Stock photos?
at least the hardware part of the industry.
Yeah.
And it was kind of confusing. It's like, don't promote AI in a way.
I mean, they kind of have to stay relevant as a fair, I get it, but it's also promoting the demise of, stock photos. They'll just go away. Like, that won't be a thing anymore.
And to continue the deep end of the podcast, if you want,
dear.
if you think about it, the way the industry and the cinema world and the Writers Guild and whatever have gone on strike for months for fighting for AI not to take their writing jobs and their proofreading jobs, could be as similar as if all photographers went on strike and said, we're not taking any more photos until we have our rights preserved on AI photography. And that's I think they're almost too late to the game.
Yeah,
because these Mid-Journeys and ChatGPTs and all this is like prompt to video, prompt to photo is already a reality.
Yeah.
But it is a scary knowledge that camera manufacturers might not sell as many cameras because you will just write like red-headed model with blue dress, and you can import the dress design and say, just make me a IKEA catalog. And IKEA catalogs, for example, are now all rendered. There's not one photo that's real, I think, which is really scary towards that. Like the industry and the fair, like it's kind of confusing and scary in both ways. Film, in a way, can't really be like replicated like that.
I mean, we've had like grain presets and things for years and years, and that's never changed the narrative. If anything, that makes it more popular.
Yeah.
It's the real deal.
I don't know. We'll see where it goes. And next year, I think the dates for Photopia are already there.
Yep.
We will try, I think, to be there either as industry walking around or as guests or exhibitors. But I recommend if you are in the vicinity, be it Europe or maybe even the US, you can plan a European trip and then jump on the fair for a few days and enjoy some nice drinks and talks and whatnot. Because I think it's worth it. Like I said, I wasn't very happy. Like I wasn't excited to go because family and trips and whatnot.
It's a lot. Like it's a long fair. It's a 4-day fair, and it's intense.
But I think we all came back like smiling and thinking, "Wow, that was awesome! I can't wait for next year." So yeah, I think the podcast can kind of end there.
Yeah,
we rambled a ton.
Great.
Lots of interesting color film processing, developing, converting sort of news.
Yeah,
even cameras per se, which is really cool. But yeah, that's
it.
That's the podcast. You can leave comments below. We will read them. Maybe. And somebody asked, let's leave this in the last question. Why is this not an audio podcast? And we can throw this at the beginning if we want. So the podcast is something that is really hard to monetize, especially from a standpoint of a film podcast. So if you put a podcast on Spotify and Podcaster or what is it, Pocket Cast and other podcast distribution networks, you can put news about like whatever, like ads on anything. But YouTube is the only place that we can actually put ads that are very intrusive and very annoying, but do pay back in a way. And I'd be thinking of like literally exporting an audio track and putting on Patreon or on members for YouTube, if that's an option that you want. But that's mainly the reason why this podcast is still on YouTube and not anywhere else, is the viability of like sitting here for a couple hours and editing helps if you're making a couple bucks. But then again, who knows? Maybe one day we'll get bored of this and we'll just do audio only.
Sit on the sofa instead.
Yes. Well, we can sit on the sofa either way. But yeah, thanks for watching. And it's been Harold. Something
like that.
And Nico.
Yeah, great.
See you in the next one.